right, Royce Markose, CISO of Vistrada, here in a Lamborghini. What's going on, man?
This is amazing, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, it's so nice to see you. Although I've seen you twice in
right.
in a 24-hour period. Thank you so much to your wife, actually, for grabbing me these nice new
those are some dope sunglasses.
Sunglasses here. Although it's raining really hard, so I probably shouldn't be wearing sunglasses.
Hey, it's my life, man. Be careful.
Yeah, but your wife actually was so kind to give me this. I actually forgot my sunglasses at home, and then she was like, yo, I've got the perfect pair for you, and I'm excited to have these nice little Japanese branded. So big shout out to your wife,
Let's see them, man.
I
Awesome.
really appreciate it. She actually owns a store here, right?
That's right. Yeah, she owns Social Life. She's an optometrist. So it was perfect, man. You wanted those glasses, and she had them, man.
Dude, well, you definitely married up, buddy.
Thank you.
His wife knows her stuff. But man, I really appreciate you coming out. And by the way, we're meeting at the exact place that we met for the first time, actually, which is Whiskey Cakes over here. Not that I ever drink or anything like that, in case my parents are watching this. Just kidding. But like really excited to like understand what you do, because you're actually a virtual CISO.
That's right.
Well, virtual in the sense partial, fractional,
Yep.
VCISO. But a lot of people sometimes they're like, oh, what does that mean? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So virtual CISO is really a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, but you're doing that not for just one company, but you're doing that for multiple companies, right? So I work for a company called Vistrada. We're a boutique IT consulting shop, have a presence from a VCISO perspective, building out that practice. That means we have clients in aerospace, municipalities, financial services, government. You name it, we're kind of dabbling in all those areas.
Is it because they can't afford one, or what's the situation that they like want a partial one?
Yeah, another good question. I think a lot of times it's, they're small to medium-sized businesses, so they are growing. They're in that aspect of kind of figuring out budget. And
but they have like a couple hundred peeps, or?
Yeah. So some have a couple hundred. Larger ones are in the thousands. So.
And they're just like, look, I'd rather get like a consultant or someone to help me understand what's going on rather than just jump into hiring someone.
Right. Yeah. So for them, for example, really regulated clients, they have
it's a little complicated.
Yeah,
right?
It gets complicated quick, right? So they need to get somebody in, understand what their risks are, and then from that point, once they understand their risks and their gaps, as they mature the organization, then maybe bring in someone internal.
So like, for example, if I'm like a healthcare company, I may have to do like PCI, obviously, because they might be accepting payments, but HIPAA as well.
HIPAA's going to be a big one.
And then you have to go in and apply the controls or advise them on how to do that.
Right. So we come in, we have a system, a platform that we use as a GRC tool. We align them from a framework perspective, what makes sense for their business, what are their risks, what kind of data they own, figure that out, pull that together into basically a large gap assessment, which aligns them to an industry best practice, for example, like you said, HIPAA. And then from there, we go through and identify those key controls that are going to be protecting their environment.
So do you feel like the majority of people, they're aware of the need? You're not really selling the need anymore, right? You're selling in a sense, you're helping them with going, because I feel like sometimes the smaller businesses, once upon a time, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago, they weren't necessarily aware of why they need to do these things, but with the compliance standards and everything like that, so now it's more of, hey, I need to do this, who should help me do it?
Absolutely. It's not the why anymore, because they know these are, from some perspective, regulatory requirements, right? So you come in as that partner for that business, building up, showcasing, hey, these are the best things to do for people, processes, technologies, understanding what tools they have in their portfolio, and trying to basically help them get over their immediate hurdles.
But like when you think about yourself, again, just knowing you for a little bit, but I feel like you're very, very low level, right? You really don't, sure, you can have the quote unquote business conversation, but I've never really known you to be someone who doesn't get into the details and weeds of everything. Like you're actually, you used to be an admin for most of this stuff, right?
Starting out, I was an engineer, right? So I kind of, I think there's like two facets of security professionals, right? You come in, one aspect is you are a check mark on a box type CISO, and the other aspect or other profile of a CISO, I would say, are ones that have been through battles. They've started as frontline folks that use these tools, right? Of doing risk assessments, of doing vulnerability scans, of doing pen tests, and kind of scratching and crawling your way up to that CISO realm.
Right. And then when you go to a company, like, what do you tell them? Because I mean, I'm sure you walk into some organizations that have literally nothing. Like, they may not even have like device management, right?
Yep.
Like they're just like give out laptops to all their company employees, and you're like, dude, like that's fine.
What are you doing?
but I mean, you don't even have like an MDM software on them, for example. So, like, what do you do for those folks?
Yeah, so that's the beauty of our kind of relationship. We come with a skill set of experts that have done consulting for the big four consulting firms, folks that have run cyber for decades, right? So we can come in, quickly assess what are the big pain points of the organization. Do they have legacy systems, shadow IT that's just straggling, that could be a huge risk to that organization, or do they have actually best of breed technologies, they're just not taking advantage of it? So that's really
really? So that happens sometimes too. Like
absolutely, there's those two aspects.
All these products don't really make it easy to make use of all their features sometimes.
That's the problem,
right?
man. Too many products, too many vendors, too many sales.
I always found it as like, what is someone's focus area, right? Like, is their focus area to really to make the person's job go forward or make their life easier? Because ultimately, as what I've learned, at least in the past year, is that you really have to think about what is that person that's going to use your product going through. Put yourself in their shoes.
Right.
And like a simple example, right? If I'm going to like install an agent on a laptop, the amount of configuration or manual stuff I do means it's specialized, means that not everyone can just figure this out.
Right.
And that causes a problem. And then it's like you have to understand, you have to go through specialized training and so on and so forth, which is not great.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I call that agent sprawl, right? So that's a problem with a lot of these tools and technologies. You're taxing your endpoints, you're taxing your people. These teams are already busy with day-to-day problems.
Right.
How are they going to take advantage of these multitudes of tools and technologies and really be able to zero in on that needle in the haystack, right? So that's an industry-wide problem, and I think what we're seeing now is that consolidation of tools and services. So things are kind of centralized and aligned, so teams can quickly, in a one-screen, viewpoint, really identify, those major things that they need to jump on ASAP.
Right, because there's like this ease of use, right? Like, how can I go in and do something or accomplish something versus, and that's what takes up people's time. I've always felt, right? Like, for instance, one thing that used to take up so much time, at least from what I used to see is like the setup time, right? So if somebody's using a product out there, a capability, and it takes 3 weeks, 4 weeks just to start using it, that in itself is a big failure, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the biggest challenge I've seen with a lot of technology and security products is, they're very clunky from a UI, UX perspective.
That's very true.
Like, hey, we're paying for this technology, but now we as a company have to get trained up on this tool just so our junior engineers that may not be, command line savvy, to really jump in and take advantage of it. So we're looking for these products to be really intuitive, where you can just jump in and have that pretty dashboard to make executives and others happy, but also for your junior analysts, right, that are just still learning and growing in the field, but they do have an important job as they're your frontline folks. They really need to understand, hey, this is the problem. Red means bad. I need to jump in ASAP and do something, right?
Fair, right? I mean, so you have 4 kids.
Absolutely.
So you have 4 children, and if one of them got an F in school, you'd probably be a little upset. So which security provider gets an F in your mind?
We're not going to go there.
No, I won't tell anyone.
There's a lot of them.
I'm
right?
so secretive.
There's a lot of them, but I would say one. But I would definitely plug Dope as having one of the nicer, slicker UIs that I've seen in a long time.
Thanks, man. Well, that's our big focus area. You really did a great job bridging us from F to A. But really, you won't give me one F product?
I won't. I'm not going to go there.
I'm so sad. That's okay though. But you know what happens?
Job security.
Job security. No, so what it is I'll plug my own products, my old products, the ones that I used to work on. Is that it's not that somebody isn't capable of doing something. It's that, are they even aware of doing it?
Yeah.
Like, I'll give you a great example. It's like, two-factor authentication. Yes, you type in your 6-digit OTP at one point in time, but like, you may have multiple points of friction in terms of even being able to generate that 6-digit OTP. Like, let's just say you have a mobile app.
Yeah.
If you can download it and like in a second, tie that to your username, beautiful.
Yeah.
But if it takes you like 20 different steps to do it and it's a bad UI, it causes the user friction.
Yeah.
And that is what, as my mentality has always been, how do you make that as zero as possible?
Yeah, I totally get that point. I think there's a lot of just poor design, right? And when we talked about it in the past, where the problem is the connection point from products, really understanding, hey, the use cases of some of these situations. And I think generally speaking, talking and polling the audience of those tools can help really shape that future of what that product should look like and how these teams will be navigating those products in the future.
And that's so important, right? Because if I can't use something immediately, one, there's no like evolution. And I think evolution from, let's call it the Gen 1 of cyber, where you had like super difficult stuff to configure and this and that, and you have to specialize knowledge, go through trainings. Like that day and age is over.
Yep.
And it's like now you have this Gen 2, which is like yeah, it's hosted. Like, I mean, you kind of have a CrowdStrike or SentinelOne. I mean, yeah, you can sign up for the product. You can get up and running on your own, which is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And then you almost have like this Gen 3 where it's like this ultra laser focus of you, just design, UX, like making sure that it works really super duper well.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think where a lot of products get it wrong is they don't want to lose customers, so they try to jam pack
as many features
as possible,
rather than focusing on the actual end user experience.
Exactly that.
And it's not even an end user sometimes. It's a lot of it's the admin, right? Like for example, you're in this role where you're working with 20 different companies, which is actually pretty unique if you think about it, right? Because you see 20 different environments, maybe 50. I don't know how many customers you guys have, but it's on the order of almost triple digits.
Yep.
And absolutely. So like if there's triple digit customers, you kind of have to like look at these environments and you and your team have to be like, oh, well, this is what's going to work here. But like if you have to constantly go through manual steps every single time.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, with these different customers, they have those unique use cases and situations. But the beauty of where we come in is we really look at best of breed technologies, right? Start off like with your Gartners or Forresters of the world to see who's kind of the leaders or who's kind of coming out there as hey, these are some products and services that you should probably look into. That's really a starting point. I'm not going to say that just because they're on one of those lists, they're like necessarily good.
Yeah,
the best of the best.
Although sometimes these lists are really like weird. Like the other day, so I always called it pay to play, but like it's not really pay. You're kind of paying for the access, right? Like, oh, I'm paying for the access to go in and chat with. Let's call it the Gartner analyst for my category every other week or every month, which is great because then that guy is aware of your stuff. That person can now understand what are you doing on a regular basis, and you kind of shift them in your direction.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense for like customers to really, if they're like a 20-man shop,
they're not going to buy.
They're not going to buy a SailPoint or a CyberArk or something like that.
Exactly.
You are going to have to kind of see where they are from a company perspective, and I think that's also another unique situation where VCISOs come in, where you really understand the nature of the business, right? Understand how they generate money, what are their pain points, what are their threat, aspects, threat models, and then really looking at right-sizing products that could meet their requirements.
So, like when I used to start in cybersecurity from a professional. I mean, I was a bit of a child hacker when I was younger, but when I started being at Symantec, I was like, all right, I thought about using everyone's products. So at the time I was working in two-factor authentication and SSO. So I was like, okay, let me use Okta, let me use Ping. This is in 2013, 14. And so you look at that stuff and you're like, all right, once you use all these products, you kind of get like a sort of like a, kind of like a wavelength of what's happening, how does it work, what is good, what is bad about these. But like, I think that's where I like to hear from you is like, besides user experience and everything like that, there's obviously improvement areas that you see.
Yeah, I think the, from the improvement perspective, really tying into, there's going to be, by nature, a lot of tools that companies have. So the integration aspect is going to be very important. Visibility of, what all they see. And is it meaningful for that organization? Is there an aspect of customization? I mean, you can't make every customer happy, but you would have to tie into the, I would say, for example, like ticketing and
ticketing systems.
Like Jira, Slack of the world, right? I mean, these are some standard tools that companies are using.
Slack for sure, yeah. I mean, like right now when we onboard a device in MDM, like we get a notification in a specific like IT security Slack group, let's call it, channel. So it's great. Like, you know, as soon as it gets onboarded, then it's good to go. So everyone knows like things are going on, or the security alerts come in there as well. We're not that big of a company ultimately, so this stuff is relatively easy to get all dialed in. But, you know, I mean, think about it. As a company, we're 30, 40 people, right? So for us, we have a strategy, and the strategy is that you have SSO everywhere. You have the compliance aspects of having anti-malware everywhere, as well as obviously we have dope.security everywhere as well, and then finally, like, we have to have MDM and device management everywhere. So like once you have those 4 components, that's like you know, a few things here and there, and then you're good enough.
And I think and, you know, to the other aspect of it, like clunkier products, they may slow down systems, or it's more complicated for their teams to actually.
Like if I would not imagine putting cyber in my environment, for example.
So the ability to actually be really quick and nimble for teams that are smaller in size, I think is going to be a huge win for companies.
Have you seen these just-in-time provisioning products and stuff like that? Like so like Conductor One and all of them.
I have.
What do you think of those?
I think there's, you know, a market for those type of
especially
tools.
for like the more like AWS infrastructure kind of companies.
Infrastructure as a service, and, you know, or hosting something in the cloud, where it really makes sense to be really quick and nimble and kind of shifting left technologies.
Right. I mean, I'm always like, when I think of this, like if there's a stadium, football stadium, for example, being in Dallas Cowboys, right?
Absolutely.
So like I always feel like there's people that own the stadium and the teams and everything. Those are the main franchise cybersecurity businesses, right? Like Palo Alto, ultimately, like from a firewall perspective, they are almost they're the leaders, right? Second to none, right? But then there's like people that add these like ancillary products on it, and that's why they end up acquiring all of them. They're just like, look, we might as well just purchase the popcorn stands purchase like all the Uber drivers and everything like that around that area, so that we can make the you know, kind of the most of what we're doing with our stadium.
Right, and that's kind of the nature of the game with security. When you have those larger players, they have the tools and resources and really budget to say, hey, who are my competitors? Maybe it makes sense that I just buy them out and take them out of the
marketplace entirely. I mean, I find it like I find it really tough as a personal, like from a founder perspective. I couldn't imagine like building something that's just something that somebody would eventually end up having a checkbox and as an add-on feature in their whole ecosystem.
It happens. I mean, that's where you really need to understand kind of that nature of who's running your security operations. Do they have a good you know, skill set or mindset of technology? Are they actually doing a service to their company by looking thoroughly at products and understanding what that product does, and does it meet that requirement that they need to cover that company from risks?
And do most of the companies out here, like I think cyber in Dallas, like you all have a pretty good community here, right? Like, tell me about CISO XC, for example.
Yeah, CISO XC, so I'm an advisor for CISO XC along with several of my colleagues. Really started a couple of years ago, where, you know, we've been to these other bigger brand conferences, and just sitting in there, they got stale over time, right? Same topics, same people, and it's just not really giving you that. You're going there for a purpose. You're going there to network. You're going there to learn. And if you're not getting those 2 aspects, really, are you wasting your time? And a lot of time it was yes. So a few colleagues of mine during COVID actually sat down and were like, hey, we need to fix this problem. And
like you, Cecil, some of these other guys, Sham, DeWalker, they're all part of it too.
Yeah, they're the owners. Yeah, they created it. We are advisors.
Okay, got it.
Several of we meet quarterly. We talk about, hey, what's happening in the industry? How can we make this exciting for security professionals? And now we have one of the, if not the largest, conference in Dallas for cybersecurity professionals, and it's built for
congratulations, man,
by CISO. So that's awesome.
I mean, I think like when I think about it like that, I definitely see. I like that the CISOs came up with it. I mean, RSA conference is its own beast, right? But like when it comes to these micro areas, it's like it's so cool to see. And obviously, I think CISO XC is a great example of this. It's like, look, cybersecurity professionals run, you know, for the people, by the people kind
That's
of a
right.
thing, right?
Yeah, I mean that's where it is a big differentiator, right? A lot of these conferences are just, hey, we think this is going to be the hot topics. They're not really polling their audience to find out what they're interested in, right?
Right.
So having that was a
Yeah,
we just got honked.
we just got honked at.
That was funny. But yeah, the CISO XCs, I mean, the CISO XCs are actually really taking the voice of CISOs and security practitioners and really connecting the dots there on what makes sense, what are CISOs really wanting to hear, and that really shows as far as how far that conference is going.
Do you think that like that conference, are you going to keep it like semi niche in the manner like where?
I think I think the way it's growing, it's gonna really grow here in DFW even further, just because we have so many people
Right.
in the market here.
But you're going to keep it organic, or?
We are going to keep it organic.
That's
yeah, I think it's we're looking at other cities. I think Houston,
Houston's not bad.
Austin's going to be a huge market to look
Austin,
at.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
many.
there's a lot of CISOs that live in those regions as well. I know Houston for sure, but
Yep.
Austin as well.
Yeah, Austin has a lot of startups, and they have these smaller companies and some larger ones. But there is a pocket of CISOs there. Houston for sure, a lot of oil and gas companies out there.
Yeah, Houston, there's a ton of oil and gas there. Yeah, but so like, that's pretty cool. So what do you have to do on this? Like, do you like, because so many of your customers, obviously, they're not really gonna participate in a conference such as this, but for you, like this gives you the opportunity of actually just chatting with all your colleagues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a networking event. Sorry, where my wife was always complaining. She's like, "Why are you at all these dinners?" And
She loves it, by the way. When I met her yesterday, she's like, "By the way, Kunal, can you explain to me why Royce is always just chilling at a dinner, a
Yep.
whiskey bar?
Yep.
What's going on here?"
yeah, she's like, "Man, you're having these fancy steaks, and I'm coming back, and I get her desserts, and she's like, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you guys partying so much?" And it's kind of twofold, right? It's more of it's an opportunity to really network and get to know your peers, and a lot of, to be honest, a lot of vendors like it because when they're talking about their products and services, there's a lot of CISOs there that are interested in. It's good to get everybody on the same page at the same time, and
Right.
and schedules complicated
Scheduler
with CISOs.
That's what I find. I mean, one thing I do find about getting together, well, we're getting together in a more friendly manner here, like in a car, chilling. Like the whole idea from this was I was in the car with one of my friends, Keith Lee. He's the CIO
That's right.
of UTA, right? And he was like, oh, he actually did this as well. And I was just driving him to the airport.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, fair enough. Like driving to the airport. And I'm like, yeah, it's actually not a bad idea. We just like drive around, talk about different things, but really get into the details of, all right, this is what works well.
Yeah.
This is what people out there should do better. But then also like plug these things, like CISO XC is a great example because there may be somebody who doesn't attend just because they're like, oh, it's for CISOs, but they may be a security engineer. In 5 years, they may become the CISO.
That's another great point.
Right?
Absolutely, yeah, because these are the events that you get to bring in junior level staff where they can network, they can meet CISOs, and that helped me early on when I was a young security engineer trying to figure out, hey, do I really want to make the commitment to go into the management route, or do I want to stay technical, hands-on? And talking to several CISOs, they're like, hey, Royce, at some point you're going to have to make that call. You won't always be that hands-on technical.
But do you feel like you're still hands-on? I feel like you are.
To an extent, yes, absolutely. I think you cannot get away from the technical aspect, not as much as before, but you really have to understand and play with the tools and technologies to understand, hey, does this make sense for my business? Is it actually solving the problem for making sure that it's covering off a threat? Or
I mean, I guess like random, maybe a weird question, but like because you work with organizations of all shapes and sizes, like which ones suffer the breaches? Like which ones is it like at what point, like what's the break point at which somebody's like, oh yeah, like I have like 20 to 50 people, therefore I'm gonna have like more likely to have an issue, or is it like 1,000? Or, what is it? The point?
I mean, it's a good question. I think a lot of times, these larger organizations, for example, banks, they have the funds, right? So they have the best of breed technologies, and they have the staff to kind of cover a lot of the low hanging fruit. Really, the small to medium sized businesses are the ones that suffer a lot because they don't have the flexibility of.
But do they get targeted as much?
They do. I mean, depending on where they sit. These hackers, they're smart. They understand, hey, I want to get into XYZ large company, but I know they partner with
with
smaller
the small
companies.
company,
so does it make sense for us to try to get to the big ones, or can we get to the smaller ones, work our way into the bigger organizations, right?
But like, do you find like with the companies that you're working with, most likely, is there like a likelihood of let's just call it attacks, like attack volume to happen on like a smaller company, or is it equal to a bigger company, or is it like obviously the scale means a little bit
I think
more?
the scale means a little bit more. It just depends, right? So if you're a larger organization, you're going to see a lot of the attacks, but you're blocking a lot of the attacks. Smaller companies, they may be lacking the visibility. They don't know they're getting, pinged, right? From a threat perspective, and then all of a sudden, their CISO is calling, 3-letter agencies of, hey, we just got breached because we,
That's fair too, right? Because they're like, oh, just because you're small doesn't mean that something may not happen either.
That's right.
That's a really good insight. But dude, of course, I really, really appreciate you coming out and
had a great time.
It was super fun. But tell me, like, what is something that you can leave people that know you, that admire you, or are inspired by you? What would you say to them if they want to be like you one day?
Absolutely. Yeah, my passion is helping the next generation of security practitioners, right? So if they ever want to learn about security, my LinkedIn is out there. Feel free to ping me. I'd love to, share stories, war stories, give them advice. I'm a mentor to several folks that are graduating currently in cybersecurity. So,
wow, that's awesome. Like helping other people. But what's like the one thing that you would tell them that they should do to be successful in cyber?
My biggest thing is be hungry and be creative, right? Figure out those. Don't look at how things are being done normally. Look outside of the box, and that's how the hackers are doing it. That's how you should be doing it.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. First off, thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much to your wife for the beautiful sunglasses, and most importantly, looking forward to being here again with you.
Till next time.
Take care.
Take care.
Awesome, man. That was so much fun.
It was pretty good, right?
So
I was a little nervous there.